We were wrong about the first predator on Earth. Somewhere in the black water of a Precambrian sea, a shape drifts past another shape. No teeth, no eyes, no sound. And for the first time in the history of this planet, one living thing ends inside another. This single act is more dangerous than any shark, any orca, any megalodon that will ever exist. Because the first predator on Earth had no teeth, no eyes, no mouth you would recognize, and it may have been smaller than the period at the end of this sentence. To find it, you have to go deeper than the deep sea. You have to go back. Forget everything you just pictured. Delete the teeth. When most people hear the first predator on Earth, their brain immediately serves up a highlight reel. Megalodon rising through blue water, jaws wider than a car. Dunkleosteus, that armored monster from the Devonian seas with a bone-plated skull and a bite that could snap a modern shark in half. Anomalocaris, the alien-shaped killer of the Cambrian shallows, gliding through the water with two grasping arms and a mouth like a pineapple slice. Sharp things, big things, things with mouths built for murder. None of them are old enough. Not even close. Megalodon vanished only around 3 million years ago. Geologically, that's yesterday. Dunkleosteus ruled the seas roughly 380 million years ago. Anomalocaris, that famous Cambrian predator that people love to call the first true hunter, cruised the shallows around 520 million years ago. Old, yes, ancient by human standards. But if you compressed all of Earth's history into a single 24-hour day, every one of those predators shows up in the last hour of a very long day. Everything before them is dark. Predation itself is much, much older, and the further back you go, the smaller the monster gets. You strip away the teeth, then the jaw, then the eyes, then the shell, then the body itself, and you keep going, past the trilobites, past the first shells, past the last stretch of the fossil record that still has anything recognizable in it, until you arrive at something that doesn't look like a predator at all. Something you could hold 10,000 of on the tip of your finger. Something that had no idea it was inventing the deadliest behavior in the history of this planet. The real predator is older than jaws, older than eyes, older than bones. So what could hunt without any of that? To understand how strange that question is, you have to understand what the ocean used to be. Because for most of Earth's history, life did not eat life. Not once, not anywhere. That sentence should stop you for a second because it breaks something you probably take for granted about biology. Picture the Precambrian Sea, warm, shallow in places, cloudy with drifting single cells. The seafloor is coated in microbial mats, slimy, colorful sheets of bacteria stretching for miles, layered in reds and greens and rust browns. Above them, single cells drift like dust in still water. Nothing chases anything, nothing hides, nothing screams a silent chemical alarm. Every living thing on Earth is feeding on the same three things: sunlight, chemicals leaking out of the seafloor, and minerals dissolved in the water. For over 2 billion years, the food chain had exactly one link. Think about that, an entire planet, alive, and nobody was hungry for anybody else. No hunt, no fear, no panic. Just cells drifting through cells, all of them running on the same fuel, all of them ignoring each other completely. That sounds peaceful. It was also a death sentence for creativity. Scientists sometimes call this stretch the boring billion. A period so evolutionarily still, so unchanging that if you fast-forwarded through hundreds of millions of years, almost nothing new appears. No new body plans, no arms race, no complexity, no push, no pressure, no reason for anything to change. Just cells, mats, and slow chemistry, generation after generation, for longer than the human mind can really hold. Nothing was hunting. And so, for 2 billion years, almost nothing became new. Something had to break that peace. And when it did, it didn't look like a predator. It looked like an accident. Somewhere, At some point that scientists still argue about, one leading estimate places it between 1.5 and 2 billion years ago, one single-celled organism did something no living thing had ever done before. It flowed around another cell. It wrapped it. It sealed it inside a membrane. It absorbed it. And then it kept doing it. Again and again and again. The first bite in Earth's history wasn't a bite. It was a swallow. Biologists call it phagocytosis. It's still happening right now, in every pond, in every drop of dirty water, in the immune cells drifting through your bloodstream this second. One cell reaches out with a soft, fluid arm of itself. Biologists call it a pseudopod, a false foot. It engulfs, it seals, it digests. No teeth, no struggle, just gone. Picture that. Something roughly 10 to 100 micrometers across, thousands of times smaller than a grain of salt, quietly ending another life, in total silence. In water no eye could see through, because there were no eyes yet, no witness, no fossil, no memory, just one soft body folding around another and closing. The first predator didn't bite, it engulfed, and that single act, one cell eating another, is the reason you exist. Here's the part almost nobody expects. Without that first swallow, complex life may never have happened. Every animal, every plant, every fungus, every fish in the deepest trench, every whale in the darkest ocean, all of them descend from a lineage that learned how to swallow. Predation didn't just kill things, it built the machinery that made bigger, hungrier, more complex bodies possible. It cracked open evolution. It gave life a reason to change. So how does something with no brain, no eyes, no nervous system decide to hunt? It doesn't, not the way you would. The first hunt was not a chase. It was a slow chemical drift. A cell releases molecules into the water, waste, sugars, signals it doesn't even know it's leaking. Another cell picks up on those molecules through receptors on its outer membrane and starts moving, not toward a target it can see because it can't see, toward higher concentrations, toward stronger signals. It's not chasing, it's leaking toward its meal. Whichever direction has more of that chemical smell, that's where it flows. The predator that changed the planet found its prey the way you'd find a warm room in a cold house, by drifting toward the change. No decision, no plan, just a body designed to move up a gradient. The mechanism is called chemotaxis, and every amoeba in every puddle on Earth is still using it. Right now, in water you'd never drink, in soil under your feet, in the film on an old dish, in your own gut, where white blood cells hunt bacteria the exact same way. Predation, at its most ancient level, is not violence, it's chemistry with a direction. The first predator did not stalk, it leaked toward its meal. Every pond you've ever seen contains this exact event right now. But there's a problem with hunting by engulfing, a brutal one, a ceiling built into the very design. A cell can only eat what fits inside it. If you're a predator whose entire hunting strategy is wrap around and absorb, you have a hard limit. You can't take on anything bigger than yourself. You can't scale up by growing better teeth because you don't have teeth. You can't chase faster because you barely move. Your maximum meal is defined by your own size. So how did predation ever get bigger? How did this soft, silent, microscopic engulfing ever lead to something with jaws? The answer is the strangest twist in this entire story, and it starts with a hunt that failed. Somewhere, deep in that ancient sea, a predator cell engulfed prey the way it always did, flowed around it, sealed it, prepared to digest it. But this time, something different happened. The prey didn't die. It stayed. It kept working. It kept producing energy. The kind of energy the predator suddenly had access to in massive amounts for free. The prey was a bacterium that had already mastered the chemistry of turning oxygen and food into fuel, and now that fuel was flowing to the cell around it. Scientists call this endosymbiosis, and it may be the most important botched murder in the history of life. That undigested prey became what we now call the mitochondrion, the tiny power plant inside every complex cell on Earth. Every muscle you flex, every thought you have, every heartbeat, every breath, every time your eyes track this line, you are burning fuel through the descendants of a cell that got swallowed and refused to finish dying. You are carrying it right now, billions of them, in your muscles, in your brain, in every cell that keeps you alive. The most important predator in history wasn't the one that killed, it was the one that couldn't finish the job. Later, another version of this same mistake happened again. A different predator swallowed a photosynthetic cell, one that could turn sunlight into food. That prey also refused to die. It became the chloroplast. Every plant on Earth, every algae bloom, every seagrass meadow feeding a manatee, every green thing that pulls carbon out of the air, all of it traces back to a cell that got eaten and stayed. The prey moved in, set up shop, started feeding the neighborhood. Predation didn't just create predators, it created the machinery of complex life itself. Every leaf, every eye, every heartbeat, all of it built from failed kills, which raises a very uncomfortable question. If predation was invented that long ago, if it was already reshaping cells more than 1 billion years before the first trilobite crawled across a Cambrian seafloor, then where is the evidence? Where are the fossils? Where is the ancient battlefield? Because if this is real, if the first predator was hunting more than 1 billion years before we have any clear record of teeth or shells or claws, then something enormous is missing from the story we usually get told. For 1 billion years, the deadliest event in Earth's history left almost no fossil, just silence. The record is not empty because nothing happened. It's empty because everything that happened was soft. Fossils form when hard parts survive. Bone, shell, tooth, cartilage under exactly the right conditions. But for that first 1 billion years of predation, nothing had hard parts. The predator was a soft blob. The prey was a soft blob. The struggle was a slow chemical drift, ending in a silent swallow. When both organisms died, the water dissolved them. Sediment covered nothing worth preserving. And the deadliest arms race in the history of this planet fought itself into the ground without leaving a face. For 1 billion years, one cell has been eating another cell across the entire ocean, and we have almost no direct evidence of it. Almost, because eventually somewhere, something started building walls. Tiny cells began wrapping themselves in mineral shells, in organic armor, in structures a predator couldn't just flow around and absorb. Defense was a response. And responses only make sense when there's something to defend against. The moment prey started armoring up, they were telling us, hundreds of millions of years in advance, that predators had already been hunting them for a very long time. In rocks roughly 740 million years old, scientists have found microscopic vase-shaped structures, the preserved shells of ancient single-celled organisms, small enough that 100 of them could fit on a grain of sand. And in many of them, there is a hole, a perfectly round hole, punched through the shell wall, deliberate, not random damage, not a crack, a door, dissolved through armor. Something drilled into that shell to reach the soft cell inside, not with teeth, not with claws. There were no teeth or claws yet. It drilled with chemistry, acids, enzymes. Something reached out, touched the shell, and slowly dissolved a doorway. Then flowed in through the door it made. The first predator with a weapon didn't bite. It dissolved. That tiny hole, invisible without a microscope, is the oldest murder scene we can prove. And once you know it's there, you can't unsee what it means. It means the arms race was already in full swing. It means prey had spent millions of years learning how to build walls, and it means predators had already learned how to break them. This is not the beginning of predation. This is predation with a fingerprint, which raises the next question. Why here? Why then? Why did this soft, silent hunt finally leave a mark in the rock after more than 1 billion years of leaving nothing? Because none of this, the chase, the drill, the swallow, the killing, would have been possible without something the early ocean did not have. Oxygen. Hunting is expensive. Moving costs energy. Digesting costs energy. Flowing around a prey cell, sealing it inside a membrane, breaking down its walls with acids. Every step burns fuel. And for the first 2 billion years of life on Earth, there was almost no free oxygen in the water. The atmosphere itself was different. The sky was probably a different color. A predator built for a modern-style hunt simply couldn't have run on the fuel available. Then, slowly, a group of bacteria called cyanobacteria began doing something new. They pulled apart water and carbon dioxide, kept the carbon, and released the leftover oxygen. For hundreds of millions of years, that oxygen got absorbed by iron dissolved in the oceans, rusting the seafloor red in enormous layered bands you can still find in Australia and South Africa today. But eventually, the oceans saturated. The iron ran out. The oxygen had nowhere to go but up. It leaked out. It filled the sky. Scientists call the biggest of these shifts the Great Oxygenation Event, roughly 2.4 billion years ago. There were later pulses too, closer to the Cambrian, when oxygen levels climbed high enough to support real animal metabolism. And somewhere in that rising oxygen, the fuel finally existed to power a real predator. The first predator needed permission from the sky. Predation is not just biology, it's atmospheric chemistry with teeth. And once that permission was granted, once oxygen crossed a threshold high enough to run a hungry body, everything changed, fast. Fast forward to roughly 541 million years ago. The seafloor doesn't look like the boring billion anymore. It's alive, it's crawling, it's crowded. In a geological blink, a few tens of millions of years, which sounds long but is a rounding error at this scale. The ocean fills with eyes, shells, claws, spines, armor, jaws. Trilobites scuttle across the mud on jointed legs. Anomalocaris, a meter-long predator with 2 grasping arms and a circular mouth full of interlocking plates, cruises through the shallows, hunting anything that moves. Every body plan you can imagine, and dozens you can't, appears in the fossil record almost at once. Textbooks call it the Cambrian Explosion. They usually describe it as a burst of biological creativity, as if evolution suddenly discovered how to invent bodies out of nowhere. That's not quite what happened. The Cambrian is not a bloom. It's a manhunt. Every shell in that fossil layer exists because something was trying to eat something else. Every eye exists because prey needed to see the predator coming. Every claw, every spine, every armor plate exists because the arms race that had been fought silently, invisibly, in soft cells for 1 billion years, finally became visible. It hardened. It fossilized. It left a record. When you look at a Cambrian fossil bed, you are not looking at biological celebration. You are looking at the tools of survivors and the weapons of hunters frozen in stone. Anomalocaris is not the first predator on Earth. It's the first predator big enough to leave a body behind. And even Anomalocaris, a meter of alien-looking hunter with compound eyes containing more than 16,000 lenses each, is a symptom, not a cause. It's the tip of an arms race that started 1 billion years earlier in silent water between 2 soft cells that never had a name. But here's the strangest part. That arms race never stopped. It's still running right now in every ocean on Earth. Every hunt in the modern ocean is still solving the same problem the first predator solved, just with better hardware. Look at a viperfish hanging motionless in the dark with needle-like teeth so long they can't even close inside its own mouth. Look at an anglerfish dangling a glowing lure over its own jaws in water where sunlight has never reached. Look at a cookie-cutter shark latching onto a whale and ripping a perfect circle of flesh out with rotating teeth, then disappearing into black water before anything can respond. Look at a giant squid, 12 meters long, wrapping arms lined with hook-tipped suckers around prey in a lightless world. Every one of them is running the same program. Something ends inside something else. The hardware has evolved for 700 million years. Jaws, muscles, venom, camouflage, echolocation, ink clouds, electric fields. But the underlying software is 1 billion years older than any of it. Look at any hunt in any nature documentary. You're watching a 2 billion-year-old idea, updated, and yet, this whole time, we've been talking about the predators, as if predators were the story, as if the hunter was the star. They're not. Here's the reframe. The ocean is not shaped by its predators. It is shaped by the fear of them. Think about what predation actually does to prey. It doesn't just kill individuals. It forces entire species to change how they live, where they go, when they move, how many babies they have, what they look like. Schooling exists because a single fish in open water gets picked off, but 1,000 fish moving as one confuses a predator's eye. Camouflage exists because being seen is being eaten. Speed exists because slowness is death. Migration exists because staying in one place is a signal you can be found. The largest animal migration on Earth is not the wildebeest crossing the Serengeti. It's not even close. Every single night, in every ocean on this planet, billions of small fish, squid, and shrimp rise hundreds of meters from the deep toward the surface to feed under the cover of darkness. Then, before dawn, they sink back down into the black. They do this because feeding in the sunlit surface layer during the day would be suicide. Something is always watching from below. Something is always waiting in the light. Every night, billions of animals rise and fall through the water column, all because something below wants to eat them. That single behavior, driven entirely by predation, moves more biomass than any other animal movement on Earth. It shapes ocean chemistry. It moves carbon from the surface into the deep, where the sinking waste eventually becomes part of long-term carbon storage. It feeds whole ecosystems of predators waiting in the middle depths. The ocean's plumbing at a planetary scale runs on fear. Predators built the hunters, but prey built the world. Which brings us back to the original question, the one this whole story started with. Who was the first predator? The honest answer is uncomfortable. We don't know. We have candidates. We have clues, vase-shaped microfossils with drilled holes, chemical signatures in ancient rocks that hint at predatory metabolism, genetic clocks that estimate when phagocytosis first evolved, living single-celled predators today, creatures like Dunkleosteus and various amoeba that may resemble what the earliest hunters looked and behaved like, but we do not have a face. We do not have a name in any textbook. We may never have one that fits. The most important predator in the history of Earth is a shape scientists are still arguing about. A smear in an ancient rock, a hole smaller than a dust particle, a hypothesis instead of a portrait. The single biggest evolutionary trigger in the story of life on this planet, and we can't put it in a museum. We know the first predator existed, we just don't know its face. And in a way, that's the point, because the first predator was never one animal. It was an act repeated by trillions of soft cells across 1 billion years of black water, invisibly in every corner of every early ocean. Not a monster, not a species, a behavior, an appetite. Now come back to the beginning. Come back to that black Precambrian sea, something soft drifting past something softer, one life ending inside another, in total silence. That single moment invented the food chain. It made complex cells possible. It made the mitochondria in your muscles possible. It made oxygen worth spending. It forced defense. It forced armor. It forced eyes. It forced the Cambrian. It forced schools of fish and vertical migration and every camouflage pattern in every reef and every glowing lure hanging in the abyss. It forced the shark. It forced the orca. It forced you, sitting here, eating dinner, converting other lives into your own body. Because that is what you do. Every meal you have ever eaten is the same act, scaled up, a soft thing ending inside another soft thing. The hardware is better. The software is unchanged. The first predator on Earth is not extinct. It never went extinct. It became you. It became every animal that has ever hunted. It became every act of eating that has ever kept a body alive. It runs in your cells. It runs in your gut. It runs every time you take a bite of anything that was once alive. Every time, without exception. The first predator on Earth had no teeth, no eyes, no mouth. It had hunger, and hunger never went extinct.